Hello, everyone. Hello, YouTubers. This is Anonymous T. Hope you're having an amazing day today. So today we are reacting/reviewing Ready to Love POTOMAC Season 6, Episode 11, also known as the All in the Family episode, where the men bring the women to meet their families, and we are down to the final 4. We are finally one episode away from the finale, which means we are a couple of episodes away now from the reunion. Thank goodness. Oh my gosh. This season, you guys, I just couldn't anymore. I just couldn't. I'm so happy this season is ending because I feel like we all need a breather after this mess this season. So the episode starts off, of course, with Tommy meeting the men at the men's lounge. And, you know, he was supposed to meet with Tina to discuss, you know, her being MIA at this retreat over the weekend. And what do you know? She's a no-show. So Tommy basically is like, she's done and on to the next. And tells the men that they need to introduce the women to the people that are closest to them, which would be their family, to see whether or not their family picks up on any qualities or any characteristics about them that could potentially be red flags, that potentially could show that they are not ready to love. So first we start off with Clifton and Joy, and Clifton introduces Joy to his cousin and his uncle. His cousin and Joy look like they're already related. So that was pretty interesting, but Joy had revealed that she is going to be in Mexico for 6 months for work or what have you, and how is that going to impact what her and Clifton have going on. So that is something that is going to still be kind of in the back of, you know, their minds as they go through this journey on how they are going to proceed with their connection. Next, we then get into, and this is where it's funny, because now we're in a place where we're discussing these kind of connections that kind of seem a little, like things aren't what they used to be type of thing. So, we see Paul and Takia having a conversation, and it's awkward. You can tell that there's no romantic spark there. And here's the thing, you guys. I feel like at this point, we're 6 seasons in, and can we stop the point where we are keeping people who are only staying on this show for strategic reasons just to make it to the final episode, just to say that they're one of 3 or 4 final couples at the end, even though we know that they're technically not ready to love each other and are likely going to be broken up a few months after the reunion episode anyways. Like, why can't we keep the actual people who are having connections, and then the people at this point who are still struggling with connections or don't have connections? Why aren't they being eliminated? Or they could be, you know, still be monitored and filmed on their journey and on their process if they do, you know, if anything changes in their connections or what have you. But this whole thing, it just feels like these last couple of episodes, it feels like, you know, Paul and Takia align because Paul feels a way about Carmen and Donovan's connection. And then it feels like Donovan and Carmen align because Donovan felt a way about seeing Sabrina and Demetrius, as well as Sabrina and Tori, at the retreat. And so this was like his little get back to, you know, basically set it up so that way they can cut off these other connections of theirs and get to the end. And it was very obvious with how the episode progressed that that's where we were heading. And I don't feel that that's like, it was like, it literally reminded me of Big Brother. I felt like we were in Big Brother mode now. We were in Survivor mode now, where now people are in alliances to stay on the show, to stay on the end, versus developing and cultivating the actual connections that they have with the person that there is their top person or what have you. And I feel like certain people got bitter, got insecure, got in their feelings about another connection. And so to be petty, to be on some get back, they're like, hey, I'm going to align this person. Doesn't matter whether or not I really like them or not, but I'm going to align with them because I'm pissed at you. I have unresolved feelings with you, but I don't like the way you're acting, so I'm going to align with this other person who technically was never my top connection, so I can get you off the show. And so from a viewer's perspective, it's uncomfortable to watch because it's like, well, what's the point? Why are we dragging this out when technically, if we're keeping it a buck, the only couple really is Joy and Clifton? Like, let's just call it what it is. There are no connections left but Joy and Clifton, and it's been that way from the start. So let's call it what it is. So again, Paul and Takia had their little awkward, sit down or whatever. Then we move on to Donovan and Sabrina. Now, I think the issue here is that this actually was a real connection at some point. And I think at some point they were both each other's top choices. But I think somewhere along the way, communication got misconstrued. It sounds as though there's different things being said off camera versus what's being said on camera, which is causing this dissension. And it got to a point where basically Donovan was over it. But the thing that I question is that Donovan didn't have an issue continuing in the process with Sabrina until Sabrina said that he wasn't ready to love. But prior to that, he was mute and had nothing to say, nothing to refute anything, as if he was still going to go along with the process with Sabrina no matter what. But because he felt that she, quote, attacked his character by saying he's not ready to love, because she felt that it was too soon after his divorce, because he's only a couple months out of this divorce, that she felt that maybe it's too soon for him to be in a serious relationship. And I don't feel that that's a negative thing to say. I don't feel like that's attacking his character. Like, am I missing something? Like, what person do you know that's freshly divorced, that's a couple months out of their divorce, that, especially if they were in a long-term marriage that was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and think that they're just going to jump right into a committed relationship right away? So I have no idea, some of this energy that people have for Sabrina. Sabrina's approach this season really reminds me of season 2's Alexis, to where they're going to date around until they figure out, okay, who's the person I have the strongest connection with, right? But what happened was, somewhere along the way, Sabrina knew who her strongest connection was, which was Donovan. But at some point, whatever happened, whatever initial spark they had, completely fizzled, whether it was because he was devoting more time to his other connections with Tina and Carmen, or there was some sort of disconnect because basically Donovan was in the cut just staring at Sabrina and Demetrius and staring at Sabrina and Tori, but not really intervening, not really making his move, not really having any conversations about developing and cultivating their connection. It was him in the hot tub with Carmen. It was him with Carmen in that bunk bed or what have you. Like, it was him and Carmen. He was not cultivating anything to build that he had with Sabrina. They had the one serious conversation where she was trying to make sure he was still serious about pursuing things since he was so recent out of his divorce, which is a valid conversation to have. I don't understand why that's being flipped into a negative. Like, it's just like if you just got out of a serious relationship for several years, and then next thing you know, a couple weeks ago, you pop up on this dating reality show. It's bound to be a question, because a lot of times what happens on these dating shows is a lot of these men will go on these shows with a girlfriend, with a wife, and break up, a few weeks before the show begins. Making it seem like they're all in this process, but really they're just trying to get to the end for whatever prize, whatever additional money or stipend or whatever comes with that. And then the show is over, you film the reunion airs, and then you either find out at the reunion or you find out a couple months down the road, oh yeah, I'm back with my wife, or I'm back with my ex. And it's like, well, wait a minute. It's like a Calfani situation, right? Where Calfani was there playing the game, and then all of a sudden you find out, oh, that's why he was acting the way he was, because he went back to his girlfriend. So I understand completely the reservations that Sabrina has with these men. And I hate that she is being attacked for this, because it's like, why is it okay when men are able to easily date around multiple women, easily able to, not be sure of certain connections, but continue to string multiple connections along until they finally decide ultimately who it is that they want. But when a woman does it, it's a problem. She's playing games. She's wasting everybody's time. She's this and she's that. Why does it have to be that way for women? Why does that? And this is why women are so afraid to date multiple men at the same time, because of this judgment, because they're not looked at the same as men doing it, which is unfortunate. Because I saw it for what it was. I think she had an initial spark with Tori, and I think she ultimately liked Demetrius more, but didn't know how to necessarily break it off or break it down with Tori. So, that ended. But then when Donovan came into the picture, that was Sabrina's number one. And they started off hot. They started off with an amazing spark, an amazing connection. I actually thought, and I even said in a previous video, I said, they're going to go the end. They're very cute. They have a lot in common. They bounce well off of one another. But there was something that happened that we're not privy to that hasn't been the same for them since. Because even in this conversation that took place, because Donovan texted Sabrina for them to go out, have a conversation, because it looked like they were just both pissed and frustrated with each other. And they were having this little last powwow. I don't ever think that, Donovan went into this conversation trying to restore the connection or anything. I think he wanted to get back at Sabrina for calling him out and saying that he's not ready to love, and he wanted to get his little licks in. But the thing is, he met his match, because Sabrina came to play. She came with her armor too to get in her digs as well. But based off of their exchange, you could tell there's still feelings there. That whatever happened, there was some disconnect. There was something that happened prior to the retreat until this episode that completely shifted from their initial spark that they had. And I don't know if it was due to their other connections. I don't know if somebody stopped talking to somebody as much. I don't know if somebody pulled back. I don't know if there's like different conversations that they're having in private, and then on camera, they're acting like they don't know each other. I don't know what happened, but it was very clear by their interaction that they were very frustrated with each other, in that they both were not on the same page in terms of what the expectations of what one another was. And as a result of this, they're going to their second choices to be petty. And that's what I got out of it, because I don't care what anybody says. Donovan didn't look at Carmen. He didn't look at Tina the same way that he looked at Sabrina. And I don't care what anybody has to say. He did not. He didn't, okay? I felt I felt they were each other's strongest connections. However, Sabrina was trying to weigh out her options. She was trying to ask the right questions that were red flags, potential red flags for her, that also kind of held back certain feelings that she was feeling, to completely give her all to a particular person. And instead of people, recognizing that and, showing Sabrina with their actions that, hey, you have nothing to worry about, I'm all in with you. Instead, they got on the defense and wanted to call her out. And then next thing you know, we're in a conversation where everybody's gaslighting each other, because nobody wants to own their part in what was the breakdown of their connection. So that's where we are with that. So then we move on to, again, Paul, he's introducing Takia to his brother. His brother is up here talking about to Paul that Takia is asking answering textbook answers. And I'm like, you're asking textbook questions, dude. Like, of course. And so, and Takia, it just felt like, it was just friends vibes with her and Paul. And I'm like, you guys don't have to do this. Like, it's not that serious. Just to say that you made it to the finale, you guys. Like, we clearly see there's not a connection between the two of you. It's not the end of the world. It's called Ready to Love for a reason. If you're not ready to love and there's no other connections left on the show, we are not going to hold it against you if you leave, if you self-eliminate, or what have you. But basically, Takia said that she's successful. She owns her own ballet shop. She's works at NASA. She was like number 3 in her class. So she has always been driven. She's always been successful. She's always always been a go-getter. It's just that she has not been able to cultivate a relationship. She's not been able to have a romantic connection that is worth sustaining and maintaining. And this is why she's on the show. But I feel like at this point, her and Paul know that they do not see it for each other, and therefore it was awkward to watch. So then we get to also Carmen and Donovan, and Donovan introduces Carmen to his mother, and this is the most toned down I have seen Carmen like all season. And I don't know if it was because she wasn't around the other women, or if it was because she was meeting Donovan's mom. And if that's the case, Donovan's mom needs to be on every episode, because it's a totally different Carmen than what we usually see on these episodes. And then I was cracking up. Like, I thought it was a nice gesture to get Donovan's mom flowers, but I was cracking up when she posted up with flowers for Donovan, some white flowers for him, and I'm like, what is happening? So ladies, do you buy men flowers? Please let me know in the comments, because I was like, what is happening? What is going on, man? Like, you didn't want to just get him like some candy or something, some chocolates? Like, you're up here bringing a man flowers? I don't know what's happening. And then the conversation was a little bit weird, because you could tell that Donovan's mom wanted to spill tea, that she had all kinds of tea on her son that she was about to unleash on, and then she held back. But that was a red flag to me, because that was like, okay, there's something that is not adding up. And then at that moment, I no longer felt bad that things with him and Sabrina didn't work out, because I'm like, yeah, there is something off that we're going to get to the bottom of at some point. And sure enough, we found out in the preview for the season finale. And so then it was a weird conversation, because, you know, once Donovan's mom started talking about morals and values, and she's up here asking Carmen about, you know, her morals and values and her upbringing, Carmen didn't answer the question. If you guys paid attention, she focused it in on material things and possessions and the haves and the have-nots. And I was like, yeah, that really doesn't answer the question. So, and then she mentioned that her son, I didn't even know she had a kid, but that her son has not been around his father in 8 years. So I found that to be very interesting as well, because that's going to be huge, whoever she ultimately, you know, does get in a serious relationship, whether it's somebody from the show or otherwise. And, you know, there's a situation where there hasn't been a father present for whatever reason for her son. So I found that very interesting in terms of what happened there. What was the breakdown of that situation and everything else? I still stand by that I like Carmen's ex, the gentleman with the salt and pepper hair and everything else. I thought he was very distinguished. He was very dignified. He seemed like a man who knew what he wants and, you know, was going to get it and everything else. It seemed very mature and just miles above, you know, what has been kind of thrown and what has been casted on these types of shows in terms of like the caliber of men that these ladies are set up with. And so I kind of, you know, I still don't get romantic vibes between Carmen and Donovan as much as I get friends with benefits, as much as I get, hey, we're physically attracted to each other. We know there's not a romantic connection, but we'll ride this out with each other just so that we can get to the end. And that's how I feel. That's how I feel about their connection. So I feel like it's more physical attraction than it is an emotional connection. I felt Donovan and Sabrina's connection was a lot stronger, and it was a healthy mix of both. You could tell they both were into each other. You could tell there was this emotional connection that they had as well, because if there wasn't, they wouldn't be that upset with each other at that restaurant. And that's the vibes that I was getting. So then we leave with that. Then we get into Demetrius and Sabrina. And I know you guys are mad at Sabrina. I know you guys are mad at her. I'm not mad. I respect it, because it was the same thing that happened season 2 with Alexis. Alexis had got so much hate because she was juggling the different men too towards the very end. And everybody got upset about it. And it's like, she is weighing her options, but at the same token, she deep down knows who her top person is. But if they're still wavering with the other connections as well, why should she drop all of her connections for him if he's not doing the same? So I get it. If you're going to continue to date I'm going to continue to date too. But if you tell me right here and right now, hey, I'm all in with you, then there's no need for me to continue to date these other dudes, because now you're showing me you're all in with me. So there's no need for me to do all this other stuff. So it's just wild to me, the approach that so many people are taking, and they're going after Sabrina, man. I feel so bad for her. Sabrina, I got your back. I got your back. Holler at Anonymous T. I got your back, because I do not understand why these people are acting brand new, like it's not okay for women to date multiple men. So anyways, we get to this, sit down with Demetrius. He's all in a suit. He's got his beard, all ready to go and lined up and everything else. They're up here talking, trying to recap based off of what Sabrina said when they all had that sit down to discuss the pros and cons of what their connections were. And so Sabrina just still basically she was really hinting at this point to Demetrius, like, hey, we're not where we need to be. And there's still some reservations I have. There's still some reservations I have about the submissive comment. And then it was even in the conversation, you could still feel the power struggle that they had. And it was also interesting because Demetrius got upset when Sabrina said that she didn't want to take her husband's last name, and her ex-husband, she didn't take his last name, and he really had an issue. And I don't know about you guys, but I know a few people who did not take their husband's last name. One in particular was a teacher that I had back in school. She took, and it was her husband didn't, he took her name. Black couple, like amazing black couple, and he took her last name. And I loved it. I was like, this is awesome. This is incredible. This is boss. Like, you didn't have to, change up or nothing. And so I didn't find it a big deal. And basically Sabrina's, approach was like, hey, I look at it as, hey, we're still going to be building together no matter whose last name is whom's, as long as we are on the same page with what we're trying to build, in this commitment. And then things went left. Because then Demetrius is like, okay, well, I have my family in town and I want to bring them over. I want you to meet them and this and that, because it's a part of the process. That was the men's assignment for this week, for the women to meet their families. And so then Sabrina throws another curveball at Demetrius. And I know these dudes are so pressed. They're so pressed. They're so upset with Sabrina. Poor thing. But she was like, listen, I don't meet anybody's family until it's serious, or till I know that, I'm about to marry them or whatever. But she was kind of, projecting what her family's views are versus what this is for the show. And we weren't asking her, at least in this particular episode, to introduce her family to anybody. And, she just as easily could have introduced, friends or whoever in a future episode if she didn't want her parents to be a part of the show or what have you. But it was like she just completely cut Demetrius down and was like, well, I don't think we're there yet to meet the family. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, Sabrina, you've seen the show before, right? You know what the process is. Come on, girl. And it was so funny because Demetrius was not expecting that at all. He was hurt. He was like, I think he was just under the impression, even if their connection wasn't where it needed to be, that Sabrina still would go along with the process on the show just so that they could continue on as a couple. And he got a rude awakening. He got a rude awakening, you guys. So that was that. So then we finished, and then we go back to the male deliberation with Tommy. It is all a hot mess. They're up here having a cheers to Final Four. Paul is trying to struggle talk through his connection with Takia, and Tommy sees red flags all over the place. He sees through what Paul is telling him, and he's like, dude, what are you talking about, this connection with Takia? Like, where's this been this whole entire time? You're just now, feeling Takia when you had all of these strong feelings about all these other women that you've been telling me for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And now out of the blue, right before the finale, right before you have to choose somebody, now all of a sudden there's Takia. And it was so funny because he saw right through it. He saw that this was like an obvious last minute pairing just to get to the end, and he was not letting Paul back down. He was not going to let Paul slide or anything, and it was hysterical. And so then all of the other men, they're talking about their connections. Donovan's talking about his sit down with Sabrina and how that didn't go well, and how also Carmen met his mother. And then also we're talking about how Clifton, he introduced his family to Joy. Then we're also talking about Demetrius and how, he breaks down that, Sabrina didn't want to meet his family. And so Tommy's like, all right, so this was a huge assignment this week. What do you think it means if you're asking a woman that you're interested in and you're connecting with to meet your family as per this week's assignment, and she tells you no? What do you think that means? And you know how important your family is to you. And so Tommy was basically trying to tell him, like, hey, Sabrina doesn't see it for you. Now, real talk, if Donovan was still in the picture, I think Sabrina would have met his family. Like, real talk. I think if her and Donovan were able to work things out, instead of, I think, what is now being perceived on Sabrina's end is looking at, like, Donovan just basically gave up on Sabrina and quickly aligned with Carmen and, was then like deuces to her. And I think as a result of that, that hurt Sabrina. So Sabrina was just like, well, screw it. I don't need to continue on, with this process any further. So, but I totally think she would have met Donovan's family if her and Donovan were still on the same page with their connection. And I just think there's unresolved feelings there. I truly do. Because nobody gets upset like that unless there's feelings involved, unless there were some serious conversations to be had of substance that really started to get each other to fall for one another, and then something completely went left, either on camera or off camera, that spilled onto camera, and they are still in their feelings about it. So it is very, 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 very obvious what time it is there. So then Tommy says there's not going to be an elimination, and then he's like, I have a surprise on the last day, and then just like leaves. And everybody's like, well, wait, what? What do you mean? So then it shows Demetrius taking, meeting up with Sabrina again. And I kind of got the vibe that this was Sabrina's last episode, only because they do a pretty obvious job with the editing. If in the excess confessionals that the person who's either going to be self-evicting or eliminating gets, they are in tons of confessionals. Like, I literally saw Sabrina in like 3 or 4 different confessional looks this episode. All looked great, by the way. I especially loved the confessional with the light purple fur and the purple makeup and everything else. I thought that look was a serve, and she looked incredible. I also love the dress that she wore to Demetrius, and I'm like, these women are hilarious, because it's like, you're up here wearing this freakum dress, this knockdown dress that is going to turn heads, only for you to flip the script on these people. Like you can't make this stuff up. So I think Demetrius really truly went in to express his feelings to Sabrina about her declining the invitation to meet his family and how that made him feel. And I think to an extent he was still willing to move forward in the process with her, even though it was pretty obvious that if this was an elimination week, she would have been eliminated, because it sounded like Donovan was done, Paul was done, and Clifton definitely wasn't going to vote to keep her. So it would have been an elimination anyways had, she stayed or what have you, or at least an elimination going into the finale. And so then, as, Demetrius is trying to get out all of his thoughts, and he's up here talking like, yeah, I sent you, the words of affirmation this morning. And I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? He sends like positive affirmations and all these things, I guess every day. And he's like, I just believe you got to start every day on a good heart and a good everything and this and that. And I was like, uh-oh, this is not going to end well. This is not going with the way that it needs to go. I saw it in Sabrina's eyes that she could not deal with this any further. And so she basically was like, hey, I think, we need to stop this journey here. I don't think we need to restart anything. I don't think we need to continue anything. I think we tried, and then somewhere along the way, it just wasn't where it needed to be. So therefore, we got to end it. Real talk, I think what happened was that Sabrina sensed that Demetrius wasn't fully all in during this process, and it was a red flag to her, in addition to the submissive comment. However, because things were still kind of up in the air at the time with Donovan and Tori, she really wasn't ready yet to let go of Demetrius until she had to. But she was expecting at some point, even with, Tori being eliminated, for things to pick up, for Demetrius to give her more, and it still didn't happen. So I think for her, she ultimately checked out, and because things obviously did not go well with, you know, where things stood with her and Donovan. Because I think, honestly, they were each other's connection. I don't care what anyone has to say. I think they're each other's true connection. Still, I stand by it. I stand by all of it. And I think that's why there's so much like drama and dissension and tension right now, because you could tell like they're not happy that they're not with their first choice. But Donovan at least is willing to ride it out and do this whole alliance thing with Carmen, where Sabrina is like, I'm not about to fake the funk, and if I can't have the person I, you know, want, then I don't need to be here, and, you know, deuces to you. And so Demetrius is like, well, I started my journey with you, so I guess I'm ending my journey with you, and that's going to be on that. And so, you know, basically said that they're going to be the ones ending up walking away from the process and everything else. So they are done. So now we are just down 2-3 couples heading into the season finale next week. So we just have Joy and Clifton, which I really think is really the only couple that's left. And then we have, they were showing us the previews, and it was funny because Paul shook the table when Tommy announced that the females now have to introduce the men to their families, and Paul's reaction was just hilarious. You could just tell he's just like over it. He's just like ready for this to be done. He is ready for the show to wrap and curtains to close and to go. Like, he's tired. He is so done with this. And so from there, you know, Takia's family, oh my gosh, her mom looks like a twin. Her and her mother are twins. And, you know, her mom's asking questions and things of that nature about the connection with her and Paul. And then also, of course, you know, Joy's family, they're meeting Clifton. They have questions about, you know, of course, Joy that's going to be going to Mexico for 6 months and how that's going to impact their connection and their relationship. And if it's something that Clifton is cool with, or if this is going to be an issue. And then we get to the tea with Donovan, which I knew Sabrina was on to something. She just didn't know what she was on. She had a reservation as to why, even though she deep down felt that that was her strongest connection, there was something holding her back. And now we have the smoking gun, you guys. We finally had the smoking gun. And the smoking gun was that Donovan cheated on his wife. And that's why he is divorced. And I was like, there it is. There it is. There it is. He doesn't like being called out, number one, because then he then turns on you the way he turned on Sabrina. But two, he stepped out on his wife. And that is a red flag. That is a deal breaker. And if Carmen still chooses him at the end, then we already know what this is. We already know what this is about, you guys. And it's not about a romantic connection. But yeah, because Carmen's family is right to call that out. Like, how do I know you're not going to cheat on my daughter? Like, that's the first thing, because cheaters usually repeat cheating. So, so that'll be very interesting. That seems like out of all the family interactions, I am actually looking forward to that one next week, because I think that there's going to be some piping hot tea, or if there is no piping hot tea, that is going to be the tea that there is a cover up, which is always worse than the crime itself. So that will be a very interesting conversation for us to see. I cannot wait for this season to be over, you guys. I cannot wait for the reunion to air. So again, the season can be over. But again, I can't stress enough, we need to revamp this show, you guys. We need to revamp this show. We need to have more compatible men and women on this show. We have to do a better job, instead of trying to just facilitate drama and trying to facilitate a moment on television. We need to ensure and cultivate these connections with these people, instead of setting up all of these people to fail. And setting up all, that's why there's so few successful couples, is because there's so much drama. There's so much things that are being filtered to these people who genuinely signed up in hopes to find love. Well, at least some of them did. And then they get there and they realize the pool of singles that are there, even with some of the curveballs. And they're like, well, wait a minute. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I was expecting. And then they're expecting still to just go through it, or they get threatened about their contract situation. So it's very uncomfortable to watch as a viewer, because it's like, we are a far cry from what season 1 and season 2 was in terms of authentic connections, in terms of women who recognized immediately the moment that they felt that they didn't see it for any other men that was there, self-eliminated, did not try to drag themselves out to the end, knowing daggone well they didn't feel a certain person anymore, or if their top connection ends up going in a different direction, they chose not to stay there and, fake a connection or have a friendship connection with somebody else just to stay on the show. They completely, said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. I didn't get what I needed out of here. My person isn't here, so deuces. But instead now, especially these past couple of seasons, it has just been nothing but drama instead of people ready to love. So we have to start back at the drawing board. I'm not confident about this Miami season that's coming up. I think it's going to be more of the same, if not worse. So I just feel like we have to go back to the basics, you guys. We have to go back to the basics. We have to go back to truly casting people that are going to be compatible instead of completely casting people who are going to have opposite personalities based off of their personality exams that they have to take for the show to facilitate drama, discord, and people who are going to be unhappy throughout this process, affecting ultimately their mental health. And I think we are seeing the effects of that, especially this season, as to why so many appear to be going through the motions, sans Clifton and Joy. So those are all of the thoughts that I had. Sorry, it's a really long video. I just wanted to give you guys some meat and some things to ponder about. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with anything that I said in my video. And, and that's on that. Please let me know your guys' thoughts. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you're notified the moment I post new content on my channel. And with that being said, I'll talk to you guys again very soon.